Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Deebo and the Dunks. Today we're going to talk hockey, of course, right? That's what we do here so most of the time. The color's all messed up. Looks just trashy, doesn't it? Don't. I always look trashy, I get that, okay? Don't even throw the joke in there, you know it's coming. We're going to go over a couple of fun things here today. First, we're going to go over a little high school hockey. We're going to run through the tournament here that's beginning. The sections start this week, and then follow sections obviously would be the state tournament. It is a little later than normal. Usually it's about St. Patrick's Day startup around the same time as the March Madness starts there for the NCAA basketball tournament. That is starting on time this week, but the tournament for hockey, state tournament, will be later this month. I believe it's April 1st that weekend. And the girls will be right around that, girls hockey also. We shall go over just the section matchups and whatnot, be real brief, nothing real extensive. I know a lot of people aren't into high school hockey, but a lot are, so we'll try and do a quick little version of that. If you're not following it real close, this will give you a little update on it, maybe get you fired up for it, because come on, best time of the year, right, for sports fans. You got local high school hockey, you've got March Madness, Twins baseball starting up in just a couple of weeks, and then all kinds of other stuff on the gamut there. If you're a high school basketball fan, that's coming here real soon. What else do we have? Yeah, there's probably other stuff. Oh, college hockey, we'll go over that, and then of course NHL hockey. We'll go over a little. First we'll start with the high school hockey, and then we'll move on to the next level, which of course is Gopher hockey, and then we'll go right on to the Wild. All right, so let's start here with a little high school hockey. Section tournaments start, I believe, technically last night. There were a couple Monday night, and then Tuesday they kind of get more full throttled. There's already been a couple of cancellations for early. There's some single A teams that had to move their games because of weather yesterday. They got 6, 7, 8 inches up north, which obviously was a travel issue, I'm guessing, so they wanted to be safe, and they've got time to move it to today or tomorrow. So we'll start with Section A, we'll start with Class A. We'll go real quick here. I don't know a ton about A. I do know a little bit. I do follow it. My nephew was playing on the Gentry Academy team, which is only at about its third year of existence. And we'll get into that here in a few minutes. So I followed A the last few years pretty closely. Obviously not as closely as Double A, but I still follow both. Section 1, real quick here. That's pretty much going to come down, I think, to Dodge County, which, wow, they've really come a long ways. Just a couple of years ago, not a real solid team, probably below 500, if I remember correctly. I know Gentry played them a couple of times. They were pretty competitive, but Gentry was really young. A bunch of sophomores and freshmen on the team, maybe like one senior, I think, and still ended up beating them. But obviously Dodge County has become a pretty decent team. They do get, I believe, the 1 seed there. And then their biggest and fiercest competition, I think, is going to be Mankato East or West. They're both very close competitive teams. They're in the 2-3 seed, so you'll see which one of those 3 teams comes. I think it would be Dodge County's first trip if they make it, so good luck to them. Section 2A, Breck has been on fire. Breck played again. I'll bring Gentry up a lot. Gentry handed it to him a couple of times, but since then I don't think Breck has lost. I think they lost 1 game since then, and they've been kind of rolling, and they've been playing pretty tough competition. I think Breck's going to come out of there. Obviously Delano being their fiercest competition. I think Orno's just a little down. They're young this year. Orno's usually a pretty strong force there in Section 2. But I would suggest that Breck gets through there. Section 3A, I hate to say this because I don't want to offend anybody, but it's not the strongest section as far as records go. You've got Hutchinson, you've got DeSalle, Cocado, which is Litchfield area, and then you've got New Ulm. One of those teams I think will come out of there. I don't know anything about any of those teams. We'll see what comes out of there. Your guess is as good as mine. I know Marshall's in that section. Boy, they've been struggling. They were pretty good about 8-9 years ago. Section 4A, which is the section that I think is going to be pretty competitive. Tartan is about a 3-4 seed in there. I see Tartan and Matamidi having to duke it out in the semifinals there. The number 1 seed there is Gentry Academy. They're undefeated. They're 13-0. They just had a recent bout of COVID. They've had 1 game in about 10, 12 days, something like that. It was they played like Minnehaha Academy, and it was like 13-0. Minnehaha's not a terrible hockey team, but Gentry is wow, they're next level. They've got a bunch of kids on that team that came over from their AAA squad, which was one of the best in the entire country last year, and they were already a good team. Gentry got stunned in sections last year on a 19-3 season, and I thought that they would maybe get a little further than that. Excuse me, I checked that. I think that was 2 years ago. Last year, they actually lost to Matamidi. I think Matamidi roughed them up, and who ended up winning state in Class A. I think they lost 5 or 6-1. Wasn't as bad as it sounded, but Matamidi was really loaded last year. Excellent team, obviously, with their state championship trophy. But I think Gentry this year is a little too much for Matamidi. Matamidi's played a very tough schedule, a AA schedule. They're playing Hill Murrays and teams like that, and then of course at the same time they still play their A teams, which is in their they're kind of a mixtured. Their conference is mixed in with A and AA teams. But they they're 10-7. They're a solid club. They'll obviously give Gentry everything they can handle if they end up matching up there in the section final, which I think most experts would say they're going to. But I do see Gentry moving through there. Section 5A, Monticello. And I think Northern Lakes, don't know anything about Northern Lakes, but I know they're not a long-standing team. I think it's a combination of a bunch of schools. I'm not sure which. I apologize for that. But you could probably see one of those two, or maybe a Chisago Lakes or Cambridge sneaking out of there. They've had pretty solid teams, seasons, but it does look like Monticello. I think they're the Moose. I think the Moose might get out of that section. Section 6A is Little Falls. Little Falls probably is the favorite, but boy, any hockey fan would tell you that Fergus Falls is right there. They have a 13-3 season. They're a real good team. Don't be surprised if it comes down to Little Falls and Fergus Falls. And your guess is as good as mine who gets out of that game. Section 7A is, I hate to say it, Duluth Denfeld, I believe, is the 2 seed there, and they're a solid hockey club. They've played a real tough schedule. They have, they schedule the toughest teams around in the A level. Even I think they have played a couple of AA squads also, but I believe Hermantown is obviously going to get out of that. Hermantown's only loss, I believe, is to Eden Prairie, and it was like 4-1. It wasn't even, it wasn't a bad loss. Hermantown's probably going to be getting to state again, and I know a lot of people want them to move up to AA, but they got 600 kids. You go to AA, and I believe Duluth Marshall, who I just brought up, they tried that, and it hasn't gone well because you have to maintain that AA level, and you have to do it consistently if you want to get to state or at least get to section finals and things like that. And when you've only got 600 kids, granted, I understand that Hermantown up there is drawing in some of the Duluth kids and whatnot, and they're transferring over in the surrounding areas, and they're coming from all over, and that's how you become a powerhouse, is you get pretty good in hockey, and then people move into your area, so to speak. We won't go too far into that, but I think you know what I mean by that. Open enrollment is still a thing, but there are rules as far as transferring and what goes and where your residence is, as a student, so to speak. But Hermantown's probably going to get the state. The Section 8A is very interesting. That's more of a tough one there. Warroad, I think, is the favorite, but East Grand Forks has played just a brutal schedule. I don't know who's going to come out of that section. I think the guess is going to be that it's Warroad, but Warroad's going to have a tough second round game, I believe, with if it's Thief River Falls. They have had a tough schedule also and had some COVID issues, so we'll kind of see who comes out of that. Obviously, Warroad's the favorite to get out of there. As far as who can win state in A, I think most experts are going to say it's pretty much down to Gentry and Hermantown, depending how the seeding draw goes. Good chance that they both get through. They'll be 1 and 2. Who's 1 or 2? I don't know. That'll be up to the experts over there at the Minnesota State High School League in their seeding. But Warroad might be the 3 seed. They've again played a tough schedule. Played some AA teams in Roseau and whatnot. Real good team. A nice bounce back season for Warroad. We'll see if they can get the state, but they got to get by East Grand Forks, who is no slouch. That was kind of your A. A is pretty set as it was last year. Matamidi kind of came out of nowhere there. So maybe there's a team in there that I don't know anything about that has had COVID issues or issues with injuries, and maybe now they're healthy, and just because their record doesn't show that they're healthy, maybe they come out of nowhere. Because Matamidi, they didn't come out of nowhere. They were the 1 seed in their section, but everybody was kind of looking down the Hermantown type road. They're kind of the favorite every year now. This year they're 16-1. Like I was saying, they're probably still the favorite, even though I think some that have seen Gentry, and I've seen Gentry twice this year on the stream, they're good. My God, they're loaded. I mean, they've got college players all over their roster. If not college players, guys that are going to go directly into juniors and then maybe at one point go on to a college squad, and maybe even a couple that can be drafted. They're that good as an A team. They can play with any double A team, as can Hermantown can obviously. Let's go over double A, a little more competitive in my opinion. I think it's wide open. I think it's wide. I thought a couple of weeks ago it was down to Lakeville South and Maple Grove. I didn't think anybody could touch them, but they both kind of ran into each other. And at the same time, South has kind of struggled. I believe they had a tough one against Prior Lake. I think they tied. So I think that both of them are obviously showing that they're beatable, but we shall see. So we'll start with one double A, section one, if you will, in double A. I don't think anybody's going to beat Lakeville South there. Their closest competition will probably be Owatonna or Mayo, and then potentially Lakeville North, but they've kind of handled North twice this year, I believe. So I see South cruising right through that section. 2A is just brutal. 2A, you've got Eden Prairie, Prior Lake, Minnetonka, Holy Family, four real good teams. 3 top 15 teams there. Minnetonka can play with anybody, and they've shown that lately. They've had very competitive games with Eden Prairie, Prior Lake, and I think they had one, Benilde, possibly, I think was the other game Minnetonka was up against. I might be off on that. My brain's kind of spinning in a circle there when it comes to matching up the squads there. But I see coming out of there, your guess is as good as mine. I think that Eden Prairie is the favorite. They're number 1 or 2 in the state right now, depending on which poll you look at. Poll being, polls. Don't send a bunch of emails and saying that I'm meaning something else, guys. That's not what I mean. Okay, the hockey polls. Section 3A is a little more interesting. You've got St. Thomas Academy, who's been on a little bit of a roll here the last couple of weeks. And then you've got Rosemount there. I think it's down to those 2 clubs. Everyone else in that section is under 500. So it's just a matter of when they get to the section final there and Rosemount takes on St. Thomas. I think St. Thomas is a slight favorite there, but Rosemount's got a real good club. They're about 12 to 15 in the state, and they've had real competitive games against top-notch competition. Section 4A, double A, comes down to these 2 teams every year. Hill Murray and White Bear Lake, at least it seems like that for traditionalists. Stillwater has really struggled lately. They were as high as like 5th or 6th ranked, and they had like a 9-1 season going, 9-2 season going, but they've stumbled lately. They've lost to Forest Lake, and I don't know if they're having COVID or injury issues. I'm not sure about that, but if they get healthy, they're dangerous. They're well coached. Mounds View's been on a roll also, a couple of upsets the last couple of weeks. Not a traditional hockey power, obviously more of a football and basketball school, but you never know when you get a good class that comes through your section, through your school. So I do see that coming down to White Bear and Hill Murray once again. I think it's like the 17th time in like 25 years those 2 will match up at one point during the section, being the 1 and 2 seeds that they'll probably match up there in the final. Section 5 AA, it looks closer than it is. Centennial's the 2 seed there. They're like 13-3. But they played Maple Grove, and holy moly did Maple, 7-1, something like that, and I think 9-0. Maple Grove just whitewashed Blaine, who I believe is at the 3 seed there. So you've got Maple Grove, Centennial, Blaine, Totino Grace. Those are your top 4 seeds. I believe those 4 seeds will move up and win their first round games, but it'll probably end up coming down to Centennial and Maple Grove, because Centennial's played Blaine twice in the last week and beat them pretty good each time. If that continues, it'll be Maple Grove Centennial, and unless Centennial plays out of their, they got a great coaching staff. Their head coach is an old acquaintance of mine. We used to play softball together and all that good stuff. They're obviously a real good squad, but Maple Grove is absolutely loaded. Division I players on that team. We'll see if they make it, and I would suspect Maple Grove's going to get through that section. Section 6A is Cretin-Durham Hall, getting a 1 seed, but they've got Wayzata, Edina, Benilde, St. Margaret's, and a pretty decent Blake team. They're really good 5 seeds there. And their 6th seed in that section is St. Louis Park. They're not a slouch. They played a tough schedule. They're a decent club. And the 7th seed in that in that section is 12-6. That's Holy Angels. So what an insanely good section. I don't think anyone would disagree. It's the best section in the state by far. It's way too loaded. When you see some of these other sections, you'd like to see them balance them, but they don't do that in the Minnesota State High School League. Maybe every few years they will unbalance it. If somebody dominates a section too easily, they'll move them into another section and vice versa. Or you ask for a transfer, but I don't know. That's going to be, you guess who's coming out of that. Edina's played good lately. Benilde's played good all season. Wayzata is dangerous as hell. Very good club. And Creighton's ranked like third in the state. They have one loss, I believe, in the entire season. So we'll see what happens. I watched a Creighton Durham Hall Forest Lake game recently, and Forest Lake, one of their better hockey teams in a few years. I think they're like 10-6, but on their home ice, Creighton just absolutely took it to them. I mean, they jumped on them early, and it continued often. And I think the final was like 9-1. So Creighton's dangerous. They've got a lot of speed. They got a great first line, damn good goalie. We'll see where if they can get out of there, they'll have earned it. Whoever gets out of that section is a dangerous team because they've just played 2 or 3 real tough games, and a state game isn't going to feel like an upgrade. Section 7 AA, I think the favorite out of there is kind of a toss-up between Grand Rapids and Andover. I think it's inevitable that those two match up. You know, you do have Cloquet. They are in that section. They've had a real tough season, but they do play a decent schedule. Again, Duluth Marshall is in there, but they're kind of having a tough year. And Duluth East, you're used to them getting to state. They've played a brutal schedule. I don't know if they have COVID issues or maybe injuries, but I don't see East having a chance this year unless they just, they've been missing 5-6 players and they're all ready to go. I don't know anything about that. I haven't heard anything or seen anything, but it does look like it's going to come down to Andover and Grand Rapids there. And who knows who's coming out of there. Grand Rapids has played a brutal schedule, as has Andover. So they'll both have earned it, whoever gets through there. And then Section 8 AA, it does look like Roseau's the favorite there, but I wouldn't be surprised, and no one would, if Moorhead or St. Michael, Albertville, who's played a brutal schedule and they've had COVID issues beyond belief, they're like a 6-11 club. They don't have a good record, but they're a tough team. They've played everybody close to a certain degree. Lots of 4-1 type losses against good teams. Rogers is also in that section, I believe. They're also dangerous and have played a tough schedule, but I wouldn't be surprised if Moorhead gets out of that section. They seem to be kind of starting to grind it together a little bit here. We'll see what happens there. So there's your high school hockey. I don't know who's going to win state on either side. I predict, in A, Gentry or Hermantown or possibly even Matamidi getting a repeat shot. If they can get by Gentry, they'll have shown that they're a damn good club, and then I think they'll get Hermantown's best swing, if you will. In AA, I have no idea. I can't even tell you who's coming out of half these sections. Like 6AA, I don't know who's coming out of that section. It's so brutal. 2AA, that's another brutal section. We could have some upsets there. I could easily see White Bear Lake or Hill Murray having a battle and one of them coming out of there and maybe an upset with White Bear Lake. But I think Hill Murray could win state. Maple Grove can win state. Lakeville South could win state. Wayzata can win state. Edina can win state. Grand Rapids can win state. I mean, these are damn good hockey teams. It should be, and obviously Lakeville South. I didn't mean to dismiss them, but they're probably the favorite. Let's move on here. That is your high school hockey kind of update. We are in the midst here of Golden Gopher fun stuff here. The Gophers are in the Big Ten championship game. They've played 2 really okay games at best. Their goalie's played well. He's been a standout, as he always is. He's up for goalie of the year, and he has a shot at the Hobie, which they don't give it to goalies very often, but he has a good chance. He's played absolutely terrific. He can, if LaFontaine continues that. I just found something interesting out. LaFontaine was actually at Michigan at one point, or he was going to Michigan, and when he found out that their goalie Moss was going there, he figured he might not play for 4 years. And he went to juniors, figured out a few things, and ended up transferring to the Gophers, which is good for us. I heard that on the broadcast the other day on Big Ten Network. Good team. The Gophers are going to be tough. They're playing. They beat Michigan 3-2. Came back from 2-0. Got the win in overtime. Walker got the tap in last night. Rebound goal last night. Fun game to watch. A little more up and down than the game before. They were kind of, Michigan State just suffocated them. Looked like a 1995 New Jersey Devils type of 1-2-2 trap. It was hard to watch. We are kind of a dump and chase team, and against a 1-2-2 trap, it's going to be tough when they've got 4 guys sitting at the line waiting for you. And their defensemen are good. They've got 2 good defensemen on Michigan State, so they were able to get to the corners good, and the dump and chase wasn't working. We did get opportunities, but they got to freshman goalie, like his fifth start, he stood on his head. He had like 40 saves, kept him in the game. We got it to overtime when we got the win there. Ranta, of course, go figure, right? He's got like 18 goals now. What a great season he's having. If you go up and down the lineup, I think everyone's kind of playing pretty good right now. I think McManus hasn't done much lately. Hopefully, he kicks it up against Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game, and then of course later on down the road in the NCAA's. Sammy Walker obviously finally broke out of his little mini slump there, getting a big goal. Brock Favors played really well on defense. I hope that continues. Brzezinski had a huge goal to tie it the other night. Monstrous goal. Didn't look like we were going to even score a goal. Huge, monstrous goal to tie it, and then we win the game later on. I think the rest of the lineup, the McLaughlin, he's played pretty decent in the last week and a half. I'd like to see him turn it up a notch here. Ben Myers, again, not getting a ton of opportunities that he's probably used to. Hopefully he can kind of turn it up a notch. And, of course, Rant has just been boy, he stands out. The kid from Finland, he's unbelievable. He is so much fun to watch. Yeah, tune into a Gopher game. Please. They're going to probably get a 1 seed if they can beat Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game. They have an outside chance of getting a number 1 seed, even if they lose to Wisconsin, say it's tight, an overtime type game. I could see the committee, because of the strange COVID rules. There's games. The 4 sites are Connecticut and the East New York, and then Colorado and Fargo are the Western sites for the NCAA tournament. There are 4 sites, total of 16 teams, 4 teams in each pod, if you will. And we don't know who the 1 seeds are going to go and where they're going to be. I would suggest and think that North Dakota is going to get a 1 seed. They're playing in their championship game today against St. Cloud State, and if they win or lose, they're probably getting the 1 seed, one of the 1 seeds, and they will probably end up playing in Fargo. Wouldn't be surprised there. They might ship Minnesota down to Colorado, or Wisconsin maybe to Colorado. I'm not sure what they're thinking. They're trying to keep everybody as close to home as possible, which becomes an issue when there's 3 Western teams that could potentially be your number 1 seeds. If they give Boston College and say Massachusetts a 1 seed, which the only way I see that happening is if Massachusetts wins the Hockey East, then potentially you could make an argument in Massachusetts it's a 1 seed with Boston College. And then you have North Dakota, Minnesota State, and Minnesota, and Wisconsin, excuse me. Let me break that down real quick and easy for you. North Dakota is going to get a 1 seed either way. Boston College, I think, is getting a 1 seed either way, unless maybe Massachusetts takes their 1 seed away. We'll see what happens there. They're both in their semifinals. They're in the Hockey East. They're not playing each other on the opposite sides of the bracket, I believe. North Dakota plays St. Cloud State. Win or lose, I think they're a 1 seed, and I think they stay home either way. If they were to drop to a 2 seed, I think they're staying in Fargo either way. And then you got Minnesota State and Minnesota. Well, you can't really ship them up to North Dakota, up to Fargo. If they're a 1 seed, that won't work. North Dakota's getting that. So you would assume they're going down to Colorado. Then what? Let's say Minnesota State goes down to Colorado. Then where's Minnesota going? Are they going to New York? Are they, where are they going to go? I don't think they're going to Connecticut. I think that's where Boston College is going to be. So it gets a little different there. Normally they wouldn't have a problem, deciding who their 4 seeds are and where they're going. They don't care if there's 3 Wests and one of them has to go out east. But with COVID, the NCAA committee they're in a conundrum here. They're trying to figure this out. Wisconsin doesn't help them any. If Wisconsin beats Minnesota handedly and they end up getting the number 1 seed instead of Minnesota, or maybe both of them do, still you got 3 Western teams and 1 Eastern team with Boston College, possibly Massachusetts. I just don't see that happening. I don't see them, even if they win the Hockey East, I'm not sure they have enough votes, so to speak, to get the number 1 seed. I think Boston College still stays there. They've been number 1 or 2 for the last 2 months, as has North Dakota, Minnesota State, and Minnesota. As my last cast, we all saw Wisconsin was down like 11 or 12. Thank God they fixed that. They're number 6 now. Excuse me, number 5. I apologize, number 5. And if they beat the Gophers, they'll be number 4, 3, or 2. I guess there's an outside shot they could be the number 1 overall seed, but it doesn't really matter. It's just a matter of where you go. And I believe the number 1 Western seed is probably going to Colorado. And who is that? Minnesota State or the Minnesota-Wisconsin winner? I'm not sure. Minnesota State still has to win their conference, the WCHA. I believe they're going to end up playing Bemidji State potentially. Bemidji State's a tough team. That won't be a cakewalk, but Minnesota State's on a roll. They only have 3 losses on the season, and they're going to be tough to beat going out. So that's the Gophers, and that's what we've got going on there. NCAA starting 2 weeks, so they start the 24th weekend, and we'll see what the Gophers draw and where they end up. My prediction is they'll end up in Colorado. I think they're going to beat the Badgers. Jeez, the Badgers are good. Badgers almost got stunned the other day. They were down 3-2 to Penn State. Needed a late goal to tie it, and then won it in overtime. And their Hobie Baker guy, if you will, I'm drawing a blank on his name. He's got like 24 goals. He's having an unbelievable season. He is going to be the guy, probably the Hobie Baker winner, and we will see what happens there. Who gets the 1 seed there between the Wisconsin Badgers and Minnesota Gophers. They could potentially both get a 1 seed with some upsets in the other conferences. We'll see. Let's move on to the Wild. Boy, nothing's changed since last time we talked. They're 6 in a row, I think they've won now. Huge win over Arizona the other night, kind of a shutout. Just really playing good hockey right now. It was nice to see the whole team playing as a unit the last few games, and that's really come under fire in the past years. They've had some dissension and some issues. I don't think that's an issue. Talbot has played really well since he got back from his injury, and Kakkonen is still on fire. I think he's still on his win streak. I think he's still won 8 in a row. He's getting Rookie of the Year nods and all that fun stuff. He's playing fantastic. If he is a rookie, is Kakkonen? I think technically he qualifies as a rookie. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he is. He'll be fighting his own teammate potentially for that. I didn't even think of that. We'll go over that here in a second. If you're ever looking to check out the lines, if you want to see the lines on what I mean by that is who's on the first line, second line, third line, fourth line, because there has been some jumbling due to injury the last week. You can always go to sites. The best site I found that works out pretty good is Daily Faceoff. Go check that out. Daily Faceoff, you can check in any team, and they'll show you the lineups. I'm sure most of you experts already have your spot you go. But for those that are just casual fans, if you want to see what the lines are, my son actually showed me this. It's pretty cool, and it's up to date. It's on a daily basis. They update it, which is great. Tells you what time they even did it. So take a look at that if you're looking for what more Wild information, if you will, and who's starting on what lines are playing together. Hasn't been a lot of changes, just a move here and there due to COVID related issues or injuries and whatnot. Right now we have Foligno out, and it sounds like Foligno, bad news, might be out a while. Sounded like a couple of weeks at first, but it might be a little bit longer than that. I think we'll be okay. We do not have the toughest part of our schedule coming up. It comes up when we've got those 8 games against the Blues coming up, and we've got Colorado and Vegas mixed in there. We've got a tough stretch coming up here soon. Hopefully he's back in the middle of that as a nice little add, and maybe, in a couple of weeks when the deadline comes, maybe we add a player. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. I think they like their lineup. I think they like their team, but you never know. We're not the general manager, right? I'm certainly not. First line has been moved. The first line is now, it's the same players. Nothing's changed there. It's still Rask centering Zuccarello and Kaprizov. But I think that they had a couple of changes there. Hartman has centered that a little bit. Bukestad centered that line for a couple of shifts the other night. So I think that line is going to pretty much stay together. I think they're going to give Rask as many shots as they can with on that line. It's kind of been the one line that's been coming out first to start the game the last couple of games, which is a change from the Eck line, Eck and Parisi line with Foligno. They've kind of moved that down to the third line, but I don't know what coach wants to do with that. His rotation goes on field, his rotation during the game. The 2 line can become the 3 line real quick in a rotation, and who they're throwing out there, depending if you're on a road game or a home game and you're calling out the lines first or second. So, obviously a little common sense there. You still have Greenway and Fiala together with Hartman. That's going pretty well. They've kind of, Fiala had a good night the other night, but they've been pretty, not scoring a lot of points the last week and a half. They were doing really well up until then. I'm not too concerned about that line. They're playing well together. They gel pretty good. And then with Eck, moving around here and now being with Parisi and Bukestad, so huge change there. You are making an adjustment there. I prefer I would prefer to see Eck with Fiala and Greenway, and you might see that a little bit in their next couple of games. We'll see what happens, but technically they have Eck centering Bukestad and Parisi right now. I don't know how that's going to go. Parisi obviously has been in the doghouse a little bit. Him and Fiala sat out the third period a couple of games ago, about 15 minutes of the period, which is startling to do that. But coach didn't really talk much about it. The players didn't talk much about it. He's a no-nonsense coach. You'll do what he says, and that's kind of how he is. I think he's trying to set a tone that this, team first, not me first. And then the third line, you have Bonino and Nico Sturm, and then Luke Johnson is getting his second non-scratch, if you will. He's going to be in the lineup here. I think this is his second game in a row. He's going to play. Played okay the other night. Obviously, that line's not getting as much time. It just kind of depends how many penalties and special teams play there is. You skip the fourth line, a lot of that, when you have lots of penalties. The defense, nothing's changed. Suter and Spurgeon are still together, and Brodin and Dumba are still together. Nothing really going there. That third line is playing, that third set of defensemen is really playing well. Ian Cole and Carson Soucy, I like what they're doing. Not getting in a lot of trouble, just kind of getting it done. Cole's veteran presence, I think, is probably helping Soucy a lot. Nice matchup there. I hope they stay exactly what they're doing there. Keep that up. Special teams, right? Oh, boy. They've changed the power play unit. It's now Zuccarello, Bukestad, and Kaprizov, which is stunning. I can't believe Bukestad's on the number one unit, but good for him. He is playing better lately. He does look like he has a jump to his step. I was saying in the last broadcast I had there, that he looked slow. He looked what's the word? Not slobby. He looked just kind of lethargic, I guess, a little bit. He's just kind of going through the motions, and maybe he was injured. I don't know. But he looks a little faster. He's going to jump in his step. He's got that stick working good. He's got that stretch. He's 6'4", 6'5", and then when you stick that extended sticks, and he can be a tough forechecker. He can cause a lot of problems and cause some issues in passing for the opposing team during the forecheck. But we will kind of see, and then they've got Suter and Spurgeon, and they kind of been mixing that up. But he mixed it up a little bit the last couple of games, pointing out that team. I kind of wish they go to a one defenseman, stick another guy in there, stick Fiala or Eck in there, and just go after it like traditionally a lot of teams do. One defenseman works just fine. But I think that I'm not the coach. That's his decision. He knows a hell of a lot more about hockey than I do. The second unit is Rask, Eck, and Fiala with Brodin and Dumba. I think Dumba and Brodin, I'd like to see them on that first line, but we'll see what happens there. We have the worst power play in the league. It's not even close. It's like 4% or 5%. It's just abysmal. It'll turn around. We'll get our power play goals. We'll get them going. I don't see too much of an issue there. Obviously, it can't get any worse, right? I mean, God, it's terrible. It's the worst power play unit in the history of hockey right now. I thought I heard the other day. It's nearing that level. It'll probably even out. We'll probably have a few good games coming up there, and if we keep outskating the other team, we're going to get a lot of opportunities. And I believe when the other team feels like they can kill your power play pretty easily, and obviously most teams, like I think Arizona's like 12-0 against us. We're 0 for 12 against them this year so far. Hopefully, we can kind of start get it clicking. And then when they start calling those penalties, I think that their people are being a little too aggressive against us, is what I'm saying. When you're not fearing the power play, okay, we'll play a little rougher. We'll dig the sticks in a little deeper. We'll hit a little late. We'll do whatever it takes. We'll throw an elbow. We'll interfere just a little bit more than normal. We'll hold a little bit more than normal. We'll do all that kind of stuff. And if we go on the PK against this Wild team right now, you don't feel a lot of fear. But hopefully we can get that fixed. I trust our coach on that. He hasn't done much wrong, obviously, this season. It's been a good, solid season. Hopefully it continues. Any comments on that, please go ahead and comment on the Facebook page, the Twitter page, or, of course, on YouTube. Please, on YouTube, subscribe. Hit the subscribe button. Always important to do for me, please. I appreciate that. It helps for a lot of things. I appreciate it if you do that. Please, please, please kind of stuff, Hate begging. If you don't, you don't. That's about all I got, except for the big news this week is Richard Pitino has been terminated. they parted ways. That's the terminology they use nowadays. He has been let go, and while he was being let go, he was interviewing for New Mexico, and he is going to accept the New Mexico job. It was down to him and the guy Miles, I believe, from Nebraska, and he won that competition, and he is going to be the New Mexico coach next season. New Mexico, bad team, 2-15 this year, really bad club. Not many competitive games. I checked out their schedule. They were losing games by 17-20 in the Mountain West Conference. It's not like that's the Big Ten. But I have no fear that Richard Pitino, who's who I'm talking about, that he will turn that New Mexico program around in just a couple of years. I wouldn't be surprised if he got them going next year already. And then within 3 to 4 years, he'll do his recruiting. He'll get his players there. I'm a little concerned that he might get a player or two to come with him. I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. I don't have any inside information. I have been digging pretty deep on what's going to happen with that. The rumors are that Marcus Carr, our star guard, is going to turn pro. Don't know that he's NBA ready, but he could go to the National Basketball Development League or something like that, maybe play overseas. Not sure what his plan is. I hope he stays another year with the Gophers, but it doesn't look good. Indications are that he is not going to stay. And Robbins came here, I believe, because of Pitino. He's an Iowa guy. Would not be surprised if he transfers. Hopefully he doesn't. But I think if one of the, if Kalsher, I don't think Kalsher's transferring. He's a Minnesota kid. But if one of these players, these top-level players left on the team, because just about everybody's coming back. Okay, so that's great. I mean, if you're a Gopher fan, if everyone comes back, including Carr, they're going to be tough. They're going to be they could win 9-10 games next year. They were on pace to win 9-10 games this year. The issue was they had the injuries to Kalsher and Robbins. Robbins hasn't played healthy in like a month and a half. And obviously they've played terrible since that. And at the same time, Kalsher has been out most of that time too. Robbins did play like 3 games, but he had like 4 points in 14 minutes. He couldn't play. He's so dinged up he cannot play. And he sat out the last month, didn't even try to play. Sat out the Big Ten tournament, the whole kit and caboodle. So I don't know if one of those players might transfer. I don't know what that's. I think if one goes, they might all start dominoing and going. We'll see. I did read a rumor on one of the blog sites that Williams is a huge Pitino guy. So potentially Williams is going to transfer. I could see him going into Mexico. We shall see. But I hope that everyone stays home and the Gophers are going to be fine next year. But at the same time, I'm also pulling for Pitino down in New Mexico. I don't think I think the last couple of years he had a good club. Last year, I think they could have made a run in the Big Ten and they could have got into the NCAA tournament. And who knows if they win a game or two and that changes everything. But he did not get there because COVID was canceled. Canceled the NCAA tournament and the Big Ten tournament. They had won a game against Northwestern last year and then didn't get to play the next game because the tournament got canceled. And then this year, obviously they beat Northwestern and they gave Ohio State a run for their life. And Ohio State, come on, second in the Big Ten. They lost to Illinois in overtime on Sunday in the Big Ten championship game. Hell of a basketball club. Great guards, by the way. Oh, boy, they make us look bad there. But Carr caught fire late, and they stayed within shouting distance most of the game. They were down 6-8, then 10-12, 6-8, 10-12, and then boom, Carr did his thing late. We were down 1 point with about 8 seconds left, and we'll see what happens there. Maybe a steal, maybe a missed couple free throws, something like that, and we can maybe steal that game. But Ohio State finished it out. They hit their free throws when it mattered, and they protected the ball. Although we did have a turnover with about 40 seconds left to really cut it close to get it to within 3, and we had the ball. So huge scare for Ohio State. What a huge upset that would have been. Without Kalsher and without Robbins to lose to this team that has lost to Nebraska and Maryland slaughtered us. And come on, everybody, just Illinois obliterated us without those two. Who else did we lose to? Rutgers. Ended up going to overtime, mostly because of, some big threes late. But they I think we lost that. Yeah, we lost that game to Rutgers on that last game. But that was at home. I think they played well. And I think they played well against Ohio State late. They played awful against Northwestern, but Northwestern kind of makes you do that sometimes, and we have a rivalry with them. We play them every year in the Big Ten tournament, and a couple times during the year, they feel confident against us, and we stole that game. Northwestern played terrible, but played better than the Gophers, so they stole that game. So to me, that's a notion that the team was still working hard, just didn't have the talent. They don't have the guys. They don't have the depth. The argument and the knock against Pitino is this terrible Big Ten record the last 8 years. And the obviously big one is that they haven't done anything in the Big Ten tournament. And then there's the argument, the NCAA tournament. The big problem with him is they say he doesn't develop teams. The teams don't get better as the season goes along. So they're not Tom Izzo type teams where they just keep getting better and better and better. And that's hard to argue with. It really is. If you're a fan or not a fan, or you're just a casual observer, you can see that they don't get real strong. The 17-18 team I thought was his best team. That team had a chance to go a really long ways in the Big Ten, but they took a tough injury and couldn't overcome that, and that's going to happen. You're 6-7 deep usually. You take out one of those best players, you're in trouble real fast in the Big Ten or in the NCAA tournament. And so that's kind of where, I get a little bit lost is he develops players. I mean, he's developed NBA players, so you can't say he doesn't develop players. He's got 2 players playing in the NBA, 3 players playing in the NBA right now. 2 for sure. I think a third is on the NBDL, the development league, just on the cusp of getting in the league. But he's got 2, and they're playing, and they're getting minutes, and they're good players. So I think that he can develop players, and they stayed 3-4 years, and then they got drafted, and then they went and played in the NBA, and that's you got to attribute that to him. He recruited those players, and he got those players to the NBA. And I think Carr is a potential NBA player down the road. I'd like to see him play another year of college basketball, and then he'd probably good season next year, like he started out this year. I think he could make a run at a late first round, maybe second round pick, and make a roster. And we'll see. He's a player. He can create his own shot. I think everybody's seen his talent. If you can score 30 on Big Ten teams, you're a player. And I think that's kind of where we're at with Pitino. I think it was time to move on. I mean, I wish we would have kept him for one more season. And the reason I say that, and a lot of people would, I know I'm in the minority. Minority here. Everybody stays then. I think even Carr comes back one more year. I think Pitino could maybe talk him into that. His agent, if he were to hire one, could talk him into staying. I'm not sure. But with Carr, with Robbins, with Kelscher, and the rest of the lineup coming back, they have one guy, Brent Johnson's the only guy leaving. They have a real good chance of next year with a couple of guys coming in to making a run, to doing something, winning 22 games, maybe finish 6th in the Big Ten, maybe win a game or 2 in the NCAA tournament and the Big Ten tournament. Who knows? But we'll never know. But I do know my fear is that I see this consistently. The Gophers hire a guy, it's not the guy, doesn't last forever. They tried Tubby, they tried Dan Monson, and they got rid of them. You could say justifiably. I personally, again, I'm way in the minority here, should not have fired Tubby Smith at the time they did. I think we'd have got 5-6 years of 20-win seasons. We would have been a consistent team there for a while. We'd have been fine. Pitino was a kid when we hired him, 30 years old. He's now 38 years old. He's a better coach now than he was 8 years ago. But I understand and I totally get the whole stance of Gopher Nation right now, which is, come on. It's been it hasn't really done anything in 8 years except for that 17-18 team. Other than that, it's been pretty bad, and it's hard to argue that. And so, it's easy to say I'm wrong here because if you stick with Pitino and it keeps going bad, then then the athletic director can start losing his job. And he's done a pretty decent job with the PJ Fleck, uprising, if you will. I think that it's tough to win in the Big Ten. From Minnesota. We want to be like Wisconsin and Iowa. We want to win in the Big Ten in football and in and in basketball. I think it's a lot harder in football to turn a program around. You've got 150 kids. It's not one player can't change that whole thing. But we got to find an identity in basketball. Who are we? We've got the barn. Do we have to update that thing? Probably for recruiting. Do we, again, by the way, we just did it a few years ago. Do we need a new barn? Do we need to get rid of it and build a new barn? I don't know. Maybe that's the answer. Maybe recruiting's an issue. It's tough to recruit in Minnesota. It's even tough to keep our own Minnesota kids when they're like, they spent their lives in winters and now they can go play in Arizona State, go play in California, and go play down in Florida, Texas, where it's beautiful all the time, it seems like to them. I don't know. Is that a big factor? I don't know. I hear it is, but I'm not these kids, and I don't know why these Minnesota kids that are, 4-star recruits are getting recruited out of this state consistently. We keep a few in football, not enough. We should keep more. I don't think any 5-star recruit should get out of this state, but that's not how it works. We've seen the Jones, we've seen the kids go to Duke, we've seen them go all over the country, we've seen them even go to Iowa and Iowa State, we've seen them go to Kansas, we've seen them go to Wisconsin over and over and over again, and it's frustrating. And I know that the deep Gopher fans, and what I mean by that is the ones that really follow Gopher basketball, are upset that he's not stronger in the AAU program and that he's not tighter with the Minnesota high school coaches so that he can have that aid in keeping those players here and playing for the U. Why he wouldn't want to do that, I don't know. Everybody says he's a great guy. Everybody says his family's great. Everything about him's great. There's just not a lot of negatives in him as a person. They're just a little frustrated. The record stands for itself. He's like 45-78 or something like that in the Big Ten, and that's awful. He's barely over 500 overall, which, you go 8 or 9 and 1 or 2 every non-conference season because you schedule about 8 patsies, so to speak, 8 gimmies, and then you have 2 or 3 tough games, maybe 4, if you schedule a tournament or you're invited to a tournament. So that's kind of where I'm at with Pitino. Yeah, 3/4 of me wanted him to stay, but I fully understand moving on. Now, who are we going to replace him with? I don't know. I've heard the Dutcher comments. Dutcher's 62 years old, but the man can recruit. He's done a good job with San Diego State. They're are they like a 6 seed, I think, this year in the tournament? They got a tough first round draw. We'll see how they do, but hopefully they do well. Dutcher's the kid of Jim Dutcher, who coached the Gophers in the 70s and 80s and had some success when I think the last Big Ten title actually is Jim Dutcher's. And he did a good job of recruiting. He was a heck of a recruiter. He recruited some damn good players. We had some good early 80s and late 70s teams, and that was Dutcher's doing. And his kid can obviously, he's a basketball boy, and he can obviously coach, but he's not a kid. He's 62 years old himself, 61, 62, right in there. But he has been at San Diego State for about 10 years, and I think this is his 4th or 5th season as head coach. He has no he has no NCAA wins. He's, I think, 0-2. He would have made it last year. They would have made it last year. They had a very good team. I think they might have even got a 1 or 2 seed last year, but obviously March Madness got wiped out because of COVID. And this year, they got a very good team again. So Dutcher, I think, is definitely the leading candidate. There's a couple of others that are Miles, I think, even is a candidate. I heard his name from Nebraska. The Utah State guy is a potential guy, and there's a few others. And it sounds like Coyle's going to really. He said he's going to be diverse and he's going to check everywhere, and they're going to be thorough, but they're going to be fast. I don't know how you do both, by the way. Be thorough and fast. Trying to get a coach fast. Good luck with that. Hopefully they get the right guy. We say this every 7, 8, 6, 8, 9, 10 years, whatever. We say it all the time. We say it for football. We say it for basketball. We don't say it for hockey. We don't say it for wrestling, and we don't say it for baseball when it comes to men's sports, and we rarely see it in girls' sports too. They're strong in most. Volleyball, we've been strong for a couple decades here, it seems like. The basketball team under Lindsay Whalen has not been as successful as it was previously, the last couple of coaches, but I think everybody has confidence. Come on, she's a hometown girl. She'll figure it out. They've had a rough bump. We'll just give her a COVID pass as a local girl, right? Why not? Come on. Everybody loves Lindsay. Come on. She can do no wrong. But she hasn't made the tournament the last couple of years. Hopefully next year they've got a better recruiting class and they'll get right back to where she wants them to be and we want them to be. But when it comes to the men's teams, we're used to this in the 2 big sports, so to speak. Football and basketball, again, it's tough. It's really tough, those 2. We got to win, but look what we got in football. Come on, we got Ohio State, we got Michigan, we got Wisconsin, we got Iowa. When Nebraska's up and running, we got Penn State. It's a tough conference. It's the second best conference in the land. And some would argue it's the best conference from time to time if the SEC has a down year, as they did a couple of years ago. But with that said, it's very, very, very hard to win the Big Ten West. We've never done it. We haven't won the Big Ten in 50-some years, 60 years I think it is actually. Do we want to win the Big Ten? Yes. Have we had a chance? Yes. Should we always strive to? Yes. But we got to understand that 8 wins, okay, and 4 or 5 wins in the Big Ten is very successful and moving in the right direction. Let's not just panic if Fleck gets his team like he did a couple of years ago to 10 or 11 wins and then drops back to 6 wins last year. And let's say this year he comes in and they only win 5 games with all that talent. Well, let's not panic, okay? Let's stay the course. Let's see what he can do in a 10 to 15 year period, okay? If you pick the right guy, okay, you stick with him. You stick with them. You stick to your guns and you figure it out. You can't knee-jerk and rip them out every time. I give them a little bit more credit in basketball. They gave Pitino a lot of leash. They gave Monson probably too much leash. They did not give Tubby enough leash. I think they should have given him a couple more years, but it is what it is. Sometimes the fans, the alumni, are a lot of pressure on an athletic director and a department, and you have to make a move, and that's where this is at. I think the majority, if you polled Minnesota Gopher basketball fans, I wouldn't be surprised if 85% agree with the firing of Pitino, and I can't really dispute that because there's power in numbers. I'm just on record. I think they should have given him a year or 2 more. I know that sounds crazy, but I'm a Pittsburgh Steeler fan. Okay, you don't fire coaches and it works. Okay, yeah. Oh, people say yeah, but listen. Chuck Noll was a coach for about 20-some years with the Steelers, okay? Won 4 Super Bowls, but he won them all in about a 7-year span. He didn't do anything from 1979 to like 1992 when he left the pro, okay? He didn't win. He didn't do anything. He was they had bad teams. They were struggling to win the division and even get in the playoffs, and they never fired him, okay? Never even thought about it. It was talked about, but back then media wasn't as big as you didn't have social media. You didn't have ESPN back then as much, or they weren't as prevalent. You didn't have 6,000 people, analyzing every move that you make every single day. So Chuck Noll coached for a lot of years, and then the next coach was Bill Cowher. Bill Cowher left. He stepped down also like Noll did, and he decided it was time for him to move on because of family reasons. He would not have been fired. They were not being successful at that point. They were struggling a little bit, 9 and 7 type seasons when he left the club. And Tomlin's had lots of down years. They just had an 8-8 year last year. They didn't make the playoffs for 2 years in a row, which is unheard of as Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, they bounced back last year, but there are whisperings that he should be fired because they started 11-0 and didn't win a playoff game, got slaughtered by Cleveland, who they had just handled a few weeks before that. What's going on? My point is, I believe you got to stick with the guy. Hire the right one. That's the first part of the process, okay? Make sure you got the right guy. Hiring is, I guess, step 1. Step 2, obviously, hire the right guy and then give him support. Anything he needs, okay? Make it work, okay? It's harder in college basketball because it's all about recruiting, getting the guys here. Give them the tools. Figure it out. Whatever it takes, but hire the right damn guy and then stick with them. Give them a chance. Many would say Pitino had 8 years, 9 years. That's enough. That's fair. I can live with that. It just sucks. All right, guys. Go Gophers. Have yourself a great day.